What's up, guys? Welcome to the Llama Lounge, where we talk about life, learning, and leadership. This is episode 3, and the Llama team will be discussing some of the concepts of Stoicism. But since we're not exactly subject matter experts in the field, we're putting our own spin on it, and we're calling it Broicism. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
All right, so welcome. This is episode 3. We're calling it Broicism. Welcome to the Llama Lounge. Joe, Scott, how you doing out there?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Just hanging out in Korea. It's a little overcast right now, so maybe it'll brighten up. It's 8 in the morning here, so it's a little bit of a challenge for me to get up, get ready for a podcast. I know what time is it over there? What time it is over there for you guys?
It's 6 p.m. here, Saturday afternoon.
Yep,
Yeah.
4 p.m. over here in sunny California. It's looking pretty nice outside.
Oh, it's overcast and cold and sweatshirt weather here in South Texas.
You see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else is going on in your neck of the woods?
Really just trying to, for us, the kids are finding out that they're not going back to school. So that's kind of tough on them because, they don't get a chance to really say farewell to their teachers and their classmates and stuff like that. But other than that, they're hanging in there pretty good. With work, it looks like we might be going back. So far, the latest date is like in another week or so. So that's kind of exciting because, like our team, we have a pretty strong team in our office. And so we are, we do calls just about every single day, but there's nothing that makes up for, that personal face-to-face interaction that we miss. So we're looking forward to it if we actually do get a chance to head back.
Yeah. How are you doing homework with the kids?
Yeah, you know what? It's they've gone from a grade, like a A through F type grading system, to a pass-fail. So at this point, it's really the kids. So it's made it a lot easier doing homework with them. But my wife is she's like the guru and all that stuff. So because typically during the day I'm handling business, I'm still doing, even though I'm working from home, our work center is still engaged with client relationships and curriculum development, training development. So work hasn't necessarily slowed down, just the work environment's changed a little bit.
Yeah. How about yourself, Joe?
Man, for me, it's pretty interesting. It seems like every day is something different, right? So there's been times during this whole COVID thing where I'm super busy operationally and admin work. And then there's days where it just seems like it shifts, right? And then I feel like I'm just teleworking and doing some of the other cool things that people would do, catch up on things. But it's not consistent. It just goes back and forth, right? Things just keep changing. So
Yeah.
it's a unique thing. And we were talking about a little bit before we started the podcast. It's just like the environment off the installation and in the local communities unique. You get to see all these people wearing their masks, some not, some you're wondering if they're wearing it because they know that, you're wearing it to protect other people. And some people you wonder if they're wearing it because they think it's protecting themselves. It's like, it's a weird environment that we're in right now.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
I saw a video the other day where a guy was running and he was looking in all the recycle bins and there was just wine bottles in every house.
I can see that. Right?
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I've been. They said that the liquor stores are jumping still.
Right.
So
because they're essential.
Absolutely. How else would you get through this?
So I don't normally do any, because with my wife, she normally does the grocery shopping and stuff like that. So while she takes off to the store, I'll stay home with the kids because again I'm still handling work duties. But we went today, and it's a different experience for me. She's seen it pretty regularly for the past few weeks. To me, it looks like everyone's about to rob the place. There's like everyone from you got people with their legitimate mask, and then you got people with they got bandanas wrapped around their face, and
Right.
And then down here, a lot of people wear the pull up. It's kind of like a turtleneck that they use for fishing that they can pull up over their face, keep sun off their face. So a lot of people are utilizing that. So it's just a different environment out there now.
Yeah, we need to make some llama mask for the folks.
Yeah, no kidding. That's becoming a business now. Like local businesses are. We have like printing places that do T-shirts and stuff like that in the local area, and they're making masks now, and people are doing it, making it their own little home work from home business.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the mask will be after this coronavirus thing kind of tapers down a little bit.
I think that some stuff's gonna, it's weird because maybe the masks will still be more common like it is over in Asia, but some of the other stuff I was thinking about, like when I went to Costco today, they have the plastic, the guards there, so you can't sneeze on them or whatever, right? Like just like you would at like a lot of the service places now, and I think those aren't going to go away. They might. Why would you take them down now? I mean, you could probably keep them up forever for just the extra protection, right? And then I started thinking, I was like, places like buffets, are they ever going to be a thing again? I was like, I just wonder.
Well, I started thinking about like growing up in the city. Like I grew up in D.C. and we would have these little corner markets that a lot of them you couldn't get into. They would have like the bulletproof glass,
right? And
so you'd have to walk up to the glass and ask for things, and it wasn't glass; it was like a plexiglass. And I'm thinking, man, they had the right idea all along. They were sneeze proof from the beginning.
Frank, did you notice that he tried to bring up how street he is again?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And another example.
We need to.
It's who I am, folks.
Well, so let's move on to the subject at hand here. And so kind of the inspiration behind our subject today, which is Broicism, kind of off of Stoicism, right? Stoicism. Joe, you've been posting a lot about, things that you're reading in Stoic Daily. And so you were kind of inspired this topic. Can you talk a little bit about what Stoicism means for you and why we're calling it Broicism?
Okay, yeah. So for me, so this is definitely going to be the bro version of Stoicism, what it is, right? And for me, we were talking about it, what that Broicism would be the perfect top title for this, because none of us are exactly experts on this, but all of us are influenced by this philosophy, right? So we were just talking like, hey, Broicism, some bros just talking about some Stoic philosophy. So I kind of brushed up a little bit so that I could try to give a baseline explanation of what Stoicism really is. So just simplified, Stoicism, it's a type of philosophy, or Tim Ferriss likes to put it as an operating system that was created in ancient Greece by a dude named Zeno of Citium, which sounds like a character on The Witcher. So it was like Zeno of Citium, along with his friend Geralt of Rivia, studied many types of Greek philosophy to include cynicism, right, which is actually very different than what we would consider cynicism now. There was also philosophy back then. And he eventually created this thing called Stoicism. So he titled it Stoicism after the place they would gather, which was called a stoa, or a porch. And this porch was the Stoa of Agora in Athens, where the members of the school would hang out and their lectures would be held. So Stoicism actually means a philosophy of the porch, right?
So ours would be wingmans.
Yeah. We watched all the fights.
That was a good Stoa.
Yeah, waited in extremely long lines and had a lot of conversations of trying to get a beer.
Did they serve beer at the Greek Stoas?
I bet they did. So you know what? I like to think they did. That's what I would like to think. Yeah, something that had some alcohol in it. They had to, right? So especially to be able to come up with some of the amazing things they did, there must have been some fun and drinks going on. So
sure.
But so one thing to keep in mind that I always try to point out is Stoicism, capital S, is really different than Stoicism, lowercase s, right? So people often identify someone as stoic if they feel they're like a person that might suppress or ignore their feelings, which is actually the opposite of what Stoicism really is. And what they teach is to acknowledge your feelings, not to characterize those feelings themselves as good or bad, and find a productive way ahead, right? So that's what Stoicism really is about. It continued to grow, and it made it to Roman times. So it was championed by a couple historical figures, and the four most commonly known are Epictetus, who was born a slave. Then you had Seneca the Younger, which back then they had Seneca the Younger, Seneca the Elder, which is basically like junior and senior. So Seneca Jr., who wore many hats. We had Marcus Aurelius, he was the emperor of Rome, and Cato the Younger, or Cato Jr., is a Roman senator. So Stoicism is based on like four major virtues: wisdom, which is like learning, but not just learning, but getting experience through application. Temperance, which to me is like discipline, right? That's the way I kind of look at it. And then courage, and then justice. And justice, what they're talking about is like doing the right thing or doing the good thing. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much the bro version of Stoicism.
Yeah.
So Joe, is there like, so because I'm completely new to the topic, and I would normally associate more with small s Stoicism, right?
Yeah.
Because when I think of the word Stoicism, so what is it? Sort of like a guidelines on how one should act, or is it more about just understanding your own self during different situations and different issues that you're dealing with?
So from my understanding of it, yes to both of those.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it is an operating system, but it also teaches you some behaviors. So a lot of studies and papers actually talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. And a lot of that and the stuff that we learned in master resilience training, a lot of it came from Stoicism and some of the philosophies from back then, right? So, to me, two or three of the big things that jump out at me and why I think that Stoicism is so awesome and why just the thoughts of it impact me so much is one thing that I take a lot from it is that there's a aspect where they say you should focus on what you can control and influence, and not waste so much time on things you can't, right? Or that you have little or no influence on. Another thing that I really like about it is it talks about servitude, and we're here to serve a purpose bigger than ourselves.
Sure.
Which, I think is a great way to live. And then taking the hardest path, the path of adversity, having the discipline to do the hardest things to get the experience and grow. And those are like three major points that I see out of a lot of Stoicism and Stoic philosophy.
So it kind of reminds me of a couple. The first thing it sort of reminds me of, and I don't know if there's like research out there or studies on similarities between that and sort of like Christianity, as far as like, because like the Bible has all these examples of how you deal with different situations, how you deal with family, finances, how do you deal with relationships and judgment. And it also reminds me of the concept of personal mastery from Peter Senge, right? So, being the best self you can be in all aspects of your life. And that's what it kind of reminds me of me. And one of the things that I do like about how you explained Stoicism is the idea of controlling what you can control, right? It reminds me of back when I was active duty and I had a young staff sergeant come in my office who was completely frustrated. She was having a rough time with some other coworkers, and I just had to keep telling her, you are giving away too much of your energy to other people.
Right.
If you just focused on yourself and taking care of yourself and handling your business, all these other issues would disappear. But the fact that you're giving so much energy to other people instead of turning it inward and working on improving yourself, you're really kind of disabling yourself. And so I think that's one thing, basically from what you just explained about it, as far as controlling what you control. I think that's huge. I think a lot more people should focus on controlling what you can control and not letting all these other things get in your path.
Yeah, so one of the pieces that I wanted to hit on talking about this subject is, relationship management. And so you hear a lot of times people at work mostly, right? Oh, well, that person is very passionate, right?
Yeah.
What is that? But normally what that means is they're the opinionated person in the office who just says whatever they want to say. And then they often do it and they raise their voice because they're quote unquote passionate about developing people or passionate about this project. But Stoicism is a little bit contradicts that, that passion, if you will. What do you think about that, Joe?
So, I think it, so in a way, it contradicts the thought, right, that you need to be loud and boisterous to get your points across, and it focuses more on internalizing, slowing down, processing what's going on, and then thinking about the best way forward, whatever that might be. So, yeah, I think that in a way it does. But when it comes to relationship management, I think the more time, the better you are about controlling your emotions. Not saying that emotions are bad, right? But controlling them in a way that you can communicate effectively, the more likely you're going to have the right conversations and not the wrong arguments, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of it.
Well, I think too, and there's also a confidence issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more confident you are in yourself, the more confident you are in your accomplishments and your abilities, the less loud you have to be, right? It's usually the loudest person that's probably the most, unsecure, right? They got to get loud and they got to make a bunch of noise because they really don't have that much confidence in who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much true. Just like a lot of times a person that seems the most arrogant is also a lot of times the most insecure, right? They're putting a facade up to cover some of those things up. And Stoicism really kind of talks about that, you don't really have to prove anything to anyone else.
Yeah.
What you need to do is prove it to yourself, right? And if you're going to challenge to be better, don't worry about being better than somebody else. Be better than former self.
Yeah,
right? And I think that those are good things.
So I can't tell if I'm a stoic or if I'm just getting old because I really don't care what other people think anymore, right?
Well, we know you're getting old. So.
but there's something to that, right? Because when you're young, you're passionate, right? You have a lot of energy to really figure out where you're going to expend that energy.
Right.
And a lot of times, younger folks, they have a hard time expressing themselves, or at least expending that energy on something that's going to pay dividends later on in life. When you're older, you start to figure it out a little bit, right? You transform into that. I remember as a young supervisor, man, I would get so frustrated sometimes that I would let my temper get the best of me, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the difference between me at 25 and now, almost turning 40. You learn from those experiences. And then you learn that flying off the handle, you lose a little bit of credibility from doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that there's another point where I was kind of asking us, because kind of in the same vein is, do you think it's just age and maturing, or do you think, remember when we used to talk about Maslow's a lot, his hierarchy?
Yeah.
And I think there's a correlation typically, right? Not everybody, but as you get older and you're more mature, you probably met those lower needs.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have less concern of the lower needs, and as you get up there, you're starting to reach that level of self-actualization, and you have the time to try to figure out. When we were younger, we're more about being achievement. We're trying to achieve whatever it might be, our goals. And when you get older, suddenly there's like a switch where now it's like, what's going to make me happy, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And there's a transition there, and I think you have to get through that first stage to get there, right? You're never going to get there if you could just skip all those things.
Well, and you really have to get to that stage to decide to actually learn what is going to make you happy. Mm-hmm. Because when you think about it, when you're when you're like your young 20s, maybe young 30s, you are associating happiness with what your peers consider happy.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the car that I want right now, right?
Exactly. Right. Oh, he's got a nice watch. Look at that car. Look at this. Look at that. And as you get a little bit older, at least in my case, as I get a little bit older, like I could care less what my neighbor is driving. Actually, when I see my neighbor with a brand new BMW, I don't think, wow, they're really killing it. I think, ooh, man, they're going to have a high, car
maintenance.
The maintenance on those things. So I kind of go, poor guy.
Yeah, you're old.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it reminds me too when I would get a brand new airman and they were in the dorms, one striper, and they have a car that's, brand new car. And I'm like, who are you trying to impress? Like,
but you gotta go through that.
Well,
you gotta
exactly,
go through that.
Exactly.
You gotta learn that.
Because we went through it. I went through it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's funny because I teach a Sunday school class, believe it or not, and it's for college and career age, so young singles about 18 to 30 years old, and so for them, they're going through, trying to keep up with what their peers are doing and their coworkers are doing, and for me, I'm trying to relate to them because I'm at that age where I don't care, like to impress. The only person I really care about impressing, at my age is like my boss, right? Because I want to keep the boss happy. But like my neighbors, I'm not, we're not having competitions on who's got the nicer car or anything like that. So it's just, but I think a lot of it comes from a confidence in myself. You know what I'm saying? I know what I've done in the past. I know what I'm capable of doing. I know where I'm able to go. So I don't have to be brash and cocky about what I'm trying to accomplish and really rub it in people's faces.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too, there's a link between Stoicism and emotional intelligence, right? And you're talking about the interpersonal skills that you build, whereas you're not trying to impress your boss. Really, it's everything where you're trying to pursue happiness,
Right.
right? And so your abilities to kind of reduce the emotional reactivities that you might have, whether you're in a meeting. I noticed this more so where I want to call the BS flag when I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna let it go. Maybe have a sidebar with them.
It'll surface later.
Right. But to me, that Tim Ferriss calls that a superpower. I really feel like it is. I feel like there's a link there.
It kind of goes back to, so like, my kids play football and one of them will score a touchdown. And the first thing they want to do is like bow up and celebrate and spike the ball and do all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, dude, just hand the ball to the ref. Right. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to show off. But at that age, right, that's what they want to do. They want to be brash and be, sort of cocky. And I have more respect for those people who are able to control that. Right. And just, let the action of scoring the touchdown speak louder than the celebration. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's sort of a stoic mentality of, you don't have to, pat yourself on the back and jump through hoops because you've already accomplished something without having to have all that extra hoorah going on.
Right. I think that Stoics would look at it in that way. And I'm like I say, I think, clearly I'm not an expert, but when it comes down to it, I think they would see that as what's the value in doing that? That celebration. Exactly. What's it doing, right? Are you doing it to make the other people feel worse? Are you doing it to make you feel better? You just scored a touchdown, right? So what do you need to feel better about, right?
Exactly.
What's that? Yeah, it seems like kind of a waste where you could be doing something else. You could be jumping back into the huddle to, figure out what you're going to do next. If you guys are going to go for the next player, you're going to go on the bench and look at, study what just happened to play, whatever it might be, right? The goods and bads, but instead you're celebrating, right?
Yeah,
and potentially causing a penalty, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because what always happens. The person that celebrates the most ends up getting embarrassed, like the next play or the next series. And so, you see those guys that'll score a touchdown and celebrate like crazy, and then they end up getting blown out the water. You don't. So, and I think Stoicism probably has that control of emotion, that control of energy, really. Like, how do you control your energy? Do you put your thoughts into important things, or do you waste your thoughts? Do you put your actions into productive things, or do you waste your energy into unproductive things?
A great example is this. You think of Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah.
Win or lose, that dude is the same, right?
Yeah.
He rocks that cutoff sweatshirt.
Yep.
I don't know if it's the same one every time, probably not, but he probably cuts the sleeve off of every new sweatshirt that he gets. But man, that really inspires his players, right?
Yeah.
That dude is a true professional in his field, and he's excellent at what he do. And so, like, you think of the other end of the spectrum, I believe it was Odell Beckham, right?
Yeah.
Where he got pissed off about a penalty or something. This might have been a few years ago, and he hits the field goal net that's on the side.
Practice net. Yeah.
Right? And what did that net do?
Right.
Knock him up.
It smacked him in the face. I swear I've done the same thing with like an ironing board.
Yeah.
Right. But to me, like if you want to put like what Stoicism is, that's the spectrum that I kind of relate it to.
Right.
It's like
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like when my kids are playing PlayStation and they start arguing about a game, and they get mad and throw the controller down, and I'm like, okay, so one, you lost control, you busted your controller, and your horrible score is still up on the screen for you to look at. It's like you just ruined it. That's
exactly what I was thinking too. The whole thing with the remote control, I was thinking about the same thing. It's like, back in the day when you threw your control, right, your controller, you get picked off on a game of Madden, right, and you throw your controller and it had a wire on it, so it couldn't go too far, right, but it could do some damage. But nowadays, you throw that thing. How much are those? Like $60-$70 now. Wireless. I stopped
buying them.
Right. I mean, you can throw them pretty far now too. So it's pretty interesting that when we don't control ourselves, the damage we can do. And back to that emotional intelligence piece you were talking about too. I think when it comes to Stoicism and understanding how your Stoics really were great at controlling their emotions around their peers and the people that they may be leading, because they knew that it would impact them. And Marcus Aurelius was probably one of the most amazing just examples of that, right? He was I was thinking today, how long have we been in this thing now, in this COVID thing? We've been
6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, we can try to say it went back to November. I guess what some people are saying, right? But for us, really, it's impacted us probably about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. We've been in lockdown.
Yeah.
That dude was leading during a 15-year plague. The Antonine Plague, right? 15 years, right? And he was leading honorably, and the things that he did, and from everything that you can study on it, he was calm. He stayed, he wanted to make sure that his people were calm, as calm as possible. So he knew that he had to remain calm, because if he started losing it, then everybody was going to lose it, right? He was going to create a lot of distress. And it's just like the Stoics are teaching us something from way back then to be able to apply to now. Right?
It's like the parent that freaks out when their kid wrecks their bike, right? The kid's fine, but the parent screams and freaks out, and then all of a sudden the kid realizes, oh, I should be freaking out too.
Right.
And so I'm usually, one of my kids falls, I'm like, you're fine, get up. Right. Before they have a chance to realize that they're injured or they're bleeding or whatever, it's like, you're fine, get up. And then they get up and they realize they're bleeding. You go, oh, okay, we'll clean it off. You're okay. But if I go running up to them, oh no, you're bleeding. Oh, poor baby. Tears are going to come. Screaming is going to come. And the same thing happens as a leader, right? If you're a leader, think about this situation right now, right? We're in COVID, dealing with COVID-19. We're dealing with a pandemic. If I'm leading a unit or organization, and all I'm doing is coming to work complaining about the situation, complaining about long lines at the grocery store, complaining about lack of toilet paper, what is that doing for my people? It doesn't build any confidence for them that we're going to get through this, okay?
No, honestly, that's probably the last person I want to be around. It's just
100%. Yeah.
It's already a unfortunate situation that we're all in, and the last thing I want to hear is somebody complain about it.
Yeah.
Well,
and if I look at it and my boss is freaking out, then that gives me the green light to freak out as well. Right. Just like you're going to assume they know more about the situation. You're going to assume that they're more informed on it. And so if they're having this attitude, this behavior towards it, and I don't have as much information, then I'm going to just believe that they are validated in the way they're responding, and I should be doing the same thing. I should be following suit. And what you end up having is a whole organization that's, after a while becomes Lord of the Flies, and everyone's going after each other, and chaos ensues.
I've never read that book. I heard it's
you can watch the movies on YouTube right now, like the 1993 versions on YouTube.
Yeah. He found out one of his YouTube rabbit holes.
I went down a YouTube rabbit hole between Lord of the Flies. Yeah.
But on the other side of that, what happens if you're in that crisis situation and your leader comes and they are confident, calm, right, making rational decisions, asking everybody their input, right? I mean, they're going through, right, and they're not minimizing the situation because it's not. We're not saying that it's not a big deal, but they're also not adding to it, right? They're not adding to it. So, and then we're moving forward. I mean, what does that make you? How does that make you feel as a follower?
Oh man, that reassures me that everything's gonna be okay, right? Like if you're the pilot and you're flying an airplane and you're having some technical difficulties in the flight deck, you don't let the passengers know that.
Oh yeah.
Right? You know, so your job as a leader is to reassure everyone that it's going to be okay. Now, obviously, you want to be transparent because that's I don't think we're talking about being fake, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference when we talk about being stoic and managing your emotions in a healthy way, to sort of keep everyone in line with, hey, this is where we're trying to get to as far as organizational goals, or here's our vision, to keep those things intact. I think that's super important. And as a follower, that gives me confidence that this person is going to make the right decisions for me and my organization.
Yeah, and I think for a leader, they have that ability to look for a pause in any situation before they react. If you ever read Viktor Frankl, he talks about that before between any action and reaction, there's a space, and I think the true leader is going to have that discipline to look for the space before they respond and to sort of put themselves in check on how they're going to respond. I recall from MRT, Master Resiliency Training days, the PIP, putting things into perspective, right? And if I'm a leader and there's a crisis at hand or some kind of emergency taking place, I can easily just kind of mentally go down the list and go, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, yeah, click, click, click. All right, what's the best thing that can happen? All right, now I can prepare for probably what's most likely going to happen. But if we are undisciplined and we just freak out and respond without putting any thought or consideration into what we're able to do, that drives things down for you.
Yeah, that's an awesome point that you brought up about the catastrophizing, right, and the PIP. And because putting in perspective, it's something that the Stoics did talk about a lot, and they're talking about how exaggerating, just think about that, like how people exaggerate about things. That was the worst thing that ever happened. This is a huge catastrophe, right? I mean, just living in hyperbole, and how just thinking about that, how that creates a different reality, right? Instead of really just hitting that baseline and looking at through an objective view. Because if you're not looking at through an objective view, you're not solving the correct problem anymore. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's a lot of logic based, but I think that's a key point. And the one thing about the logic base is a lot of people think Stoics are just super cold and they don't have that, the whole idea of Stoicism is that, you don't have any emotions. It's not true at all, actually. It's just a control of it to be able to make it the most productive possible. So.
Yeah. And I think to kind of go back to the catastrophizing a little bit, what happens is if you start kind of going down that road, you will start adding problems that aren't necessarily associated with the crisis you're dealing with. So you'll start including that to validate your reason for your freak out, right? Like, so we got this pandemic and there's no toilet paper and this and this and that. And all of a sudden you got everybody worried, and, it's just take it one problem at a time, right? Try to isolate them and look at it one thing at a time, because if you try to compound them, right, you just make that situation a monster. You just make a monster out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is a good opportunity for me to talk about Trevor Mawad. He's a performance coach that I got turned on to by actually one of the other podcasts I would listen to, Adam Carolla. He has got a great podcast if you guys haven't listened to that one. But he had Trevor on there, and this guy is a performance coach, and he's worked with folks like Nick Saban. He has an organization called Limitless Minds, and basically his philosophy is that not necessarily are you always looking at the positive and everything, and you're being cheery, because that can come off as fake a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, that's probably not realistic. Like I think what his philosophy is to stay neutral, right? And
Right.
if you stay in that neutral zone, right, versus always trying to be cheery and positive, that's a lot more realistic for a lot of us. And in fact, he was talking about if you are complaining, right, and if you're saying something negative out loud, he was saying that it's 40 to 70 times more likely to have an adverse impact on your life.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
amazing.
significant, right?
Because you're reinforcing it. You're making it. You're actually actualizing it, right? Because it could be a thought, but the second you started expressing it, you've now owned it. And once you own it, it's hard to go back and go, you know what? Maybe I had the wrong idea about this. And so most people, out of confidence or excuse me, out of pride, will say, "Yep, this is horrible," and they'll keep rolling with it rather than taking the time to pause and backtrack a little bit. At least in my experience and how I see things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, because his point is like whenever, and to your point, Scott, is like when you say it, you visualize it, right? You're not just saying it and it's not nothing's going on in the brain, right?
Right.
You're visualizing it now. So you already just went through a rehearsal on how that's going to go bad or how
Yeah.
that is bad, right? And that's a unique skill that, or I guess a blessing and a curse that we have in that front part of our brain that we can, assign things, visualize and assign emotions to things and
Sure.
our own judgments on things. And a lot of times it's not needed. Really, we shouldn't do that, right? We don't need to assign judgment. Maybe it just happened. I remember there was a meme that I posted a little while ago, something like, you don't have to react to everything.
No.
Right? You just got to sit back and observe, right? You don't have to react to every single thing that happens that you see.
How much time gets wasted reacting to things that have no weight or value at all? I've seen, and we joked about going down rabbit holes and YouTube and stuff like that, but I've gotten caught up in the past and going through like political discussions and arguments about this, that, and the other on, like, say, Facebook, on a Facebook thread, right? So someone will post something and all of a sudden you're in this 3-4 hour war because you're going back and checking on it every 10 minutes to see who replied and responded. And at the end of the day, you're like, what was accomplished?
Right.
I didn't change that person's mind. They didn't change my mind. If anything, I probably lost focus on something that was probably more important that I should have been working on, instead of focusing on these things that, one, I can't control. I can't control the fact that this person posted something online. I can't control the fact that there are other people that have different opinions as me. All I did was waste my day.
Yeah, for sure. And what was your energy level like throughout that? If you could actually record it, and how is it impacting your health? Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
like, if you could go back.
Yeah,
and
because
look
your
at
blood
that and actually
pressure is going
record.
up.
Right.
And you I don't know if you've gone through, but I've done it where I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the perfect comeback. Oh, they're gonna see my side now, and you hype yourself up and you start typing, and then all of a sudden they come back with something just as strong or just as clever, and you go, oh, all right, now I gotta hype myself up again. It's just a waste of time. Like, you just wasted a whole.
And you're not changing anybody's minds, right?
No.
Because their mind's already set. So all you're doing is wasting time.
And it's somebody that I've never met who lives on the other side of the country who I'll never meet. And they just happen to be some random person that posted in the same thread that I was reading. It's we gotta learn, at least I can say for myself, learn to start focusing on the important things in life and not, those random things. And I guess that's where Stoicism can studying up on that and learning a little bit more about that can play a role, because again, it's about if I'm confident in my belief system, I don't need to worry about what other people are saying against it. I don't need to put energy into debating people I don't know.
Right. Absolutely. It's just a waste of energy. And like I said, how many times how much time are you wasting? How many times have you gotten into a conversation with somebody and it was a debate maybe and it turned into an argument? But when you look back at it, they said something at some point, or you did, that was just completely ludicrous, right? It didn't even make sense. And then you go back, and I've had that conversation with somebody. I was trying to have a rational debate, right? And then they said something just ludicrous, and I was like, well, this conversation's over. I was like, because we're not going anywhere. There's clearly nowhere to go from here.
Yeah.
So
there's no need to entertain this anymore.
Right? Yeah. We're not going anywhere.
I'll use an example of kids football again. Because forgive me for using these examples, but that was I'm a parent. I got kids. That's life. And I remember, these are 8-year-olds playing football, like flag football. Yeah. And I remember the coach just going off, like on a play that got busted. And just screaming and yelling. And one of the other coaches, all he did was sit back and go, next play, next play. Mm-hmm. Can we go? Let's just move to the next play. It's too hot to be out here screaming at an 8-year-old. Like, next play. And so you got to think about that. Like, one, these are 8-year-olds playing flag football. It's not affecting a college championship. It's not affecting a Super Bowl. No one's scholarship's going to get affected by this. Why are we screaming and jumping up and down over an 8-year-old flag football game? Like,
I don't know. It gets pretty competitive.
It does.
It gets pretty competitive.
And I've seen that where I've been like a assistant coach, and I'm on the refs about plays. Like, ref, come on, you can let that go. You can let that happen. And at the end of the day, it's like, what's the big deal?
Yeah. My
kids just want to have fun.
So I think you bring up a good point, though, when we talk about Stoicism and on our podcast, and it's easy to talk about, but in the heat of the situation, man, I fail all the time. You know what I mean?
Every day.
I'm like, I might have been the parent to tell the ref to get a new job. I might have been that one. What I mean?
The ref is getting paid $7 an hour.
Yeah, I might have been the one to tell my boss. I'm like, hey, your boss doesn't know what he's doing. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like every day I fail, but there's so many opportunities to get better at it. Sure. To practice your stoicism. How do you feel like you can leverage that in your day to day?
In respects to how to just try to get better at stoicism. Yeah, one thing to me is I think we're always growing, right? And we should always be try to get better. And one of the, to me, I know I'm not good at is balancing things out and always being disciplined. Although some people probably think I'm extremely disciplined, there's always some room for improvement there. And I think that constantly finding ways to go through adversity and leveraging that discipline that it takes to do it. Like, we were talking earlier, Z, about how, I've been posting stuff about me running and stuff. And man, I almost never want to get the shoes on and go run, right? Almost never do I actually want to go do it. But, that discipline and putting myself through that pain, there's some type of growth on the other side of that. And I think, to me, like, I think there's such a big part of stoicism, leveraging the concepts. And like you said, none of us are 100% there. None of us. Marcus Aurelius was 100% there. None of them were, right? And they understood that. But for me, I think just trying to see it, living through those virtues, and just trying to be a better human being. I think those are all important things. But for me, I really do feel like just trying to stay as disciplined as possible, and do the right thing, right? Just doing the right thing.
Yeah. How about you, Scott? How do you feel like? Like some of your things as far as stoicism, how do you feel like you can get better at? How do you hone that craft?
I think for me, because of my faith, when I am more consistent with like devotions and praying, that helps me to be a little bit more conscious and aware of my thoughts, right? But when I step away from that, right, if I start slipping in that area, I notice that, my reactions and my words come out a lot faster if I'm having a negative thought. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can discipline yourself. Like we discipline our body because we plan to work out. We discipline our studies because we schedule to study. We discipline our diet. But I think probably one of the strongest things for anybody to discipline is their reaction. Because if you think your thought, depending on the size of your head, if you got a big old nugget, it doesn't take long for your brain, for information to travel from your brain to your mouth, right? And so I think for me, the more aware I am as far as studying and reading and meditating, praying, those type of things, the more aware I am of what type of thoughts are in my head. But if I get away from that discipline of, studying and reading and things like that, then my mind wanders. You know what I mean? So it's like a devil's playground, idle hands. You know, the less focused you are on things, the more trouble you can get yourself into. So if I'm not using my brain for something productive, it can sort of wander a little bit, and the less disciplined my brain becomes.
Yeah. Do you guys meditate?
I don't know. I mean, everyone's got a different idea.
Right.
For me, it's prayer with the family or just by myself, but try to do that pretty regularly.
Yeah, I have a meditation pillow and I utilize it sometimes, but I found most of my meditation, I guess you would say, my personal meditation is when I'm jogging. When I'm running, it feels like that's where my mind is just the most free, and typically that's where I get my best thoughts, and then I don't have a pen with me. It's great. Right. But I mean, that's where I find my relaxation and my just my centering, is when I try to do that.
Hey Joe, by the way, the pace you're running, it's not a jog, okay? You're running. If you're going like 12 mile per hour,
Well, man, funny. I got a lot of friends that are running a lot faster too. It's crazy.
If you're doing a 12-minute mile, that's probably jogging. But if you're doing like 8-minute mile, 9-minute mile, I'd say you're running, Joe.
Yeah. Joe, you're talking about the creative juices flowing. Yeah. It's weird. You know when I get mine? When I'm brushing my teeth. When I'm brushing my teeth, what else are you thinking about? I'm not thinking about hitting every tooth. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking about things that happened during the day or things that I'm going to do during the day, right? And I promise you, I've had some really cool ideas come from just brushing my teeth. I call them toothbrush ideas.
There you go. Funny.
That's pretty amazing. I don't think I've ever heard that before from anybody.
I used to get that from running. Like when I used to run a lot, 6-8 miles, stuff like that. I would solve the world's problem on a 6-mile run. I haven't run in a while, so I need to get back into that. But yeah, it's just how. And again, like Z, like you make the perfect point. 2 minutes. I don't know how long you take to brush your teeth, but it's supposed to be 2 minutes, I think.
Happy birthday twice is what they say, right?
Oh, okay. Well, see, I have electric toothbrush, so I just keep brushing until it shuts off. But I think it's about 2 minutes. But the thing is, you're using that time to focus on something. It could be clearing your head, but it could be also to be, that's 2 minutes of productivity right there. It's I could have just wasted it, but
right. And that's that's another thing that back to the whole Stoicism thing. I think there's a point where I know I used a hashtag no time wasted a lot, and I wrote an article about how a lot of times we have a lot of wasted and dead time that we're not utilizing, like driving to work and you're zoning out and you're listening to some music that you listen to over and over again, or you're putting in a podcast or listen to a book or something, and I think about that a lot. And you're right. How do you maximize that? And that's another thing I was just listening to is Marcus Aurelius used to do that. He as an
emperor, would drive to work. Oh
no, he wasn't driving to work, but if anything, somebody drove him, right? But he was going to the gladiator games, and he was not a fan. Like, just knowing his temperament, he was not a fan. But he got pressured to go, and because he's the emperor and he's obligated to go, right? And I know there's been stuff that we felt obligated to go in our military careers, right? Yeah. But what he would do is actually take care of business and bring stuff, that to study or read or write while he was there at the game. And a lot of times people weren't able to see that he wasn't really paying attention to the games, and but he was still getting that he wasn't wasting any time. And that's something is a huge part of Stoic philosophy as well.
I think too. Go ahead, Z.
Something that I preach to my kids is earn your free time. Yeah. Right. Like, you want to play Fortnite and Call of Duty, and you want to spend hours on that, but you got to earn that. You know what I mean? Like, do what you need to do before you get to the point where, like, I literally have nothing going on, so I can, play guilt-free a couple hours of video games. But the other piece that we were talking about, is you guys both hit on discipline. Shout out to Jocko William. Right? He talks about discipline equals freedom.
Yeah, earn the sunrise.
It's crazy, right?
It absolutely does, though. I mean, it's. Yeah, go ahead, Z. I was going to say there's so many ways where that statement is such a fact. I mean, think about people who mishandle the finances, right? So they're undisciplined with finances, and they don't really have freedom because now they're sort of slave to a credit card company. But think about the person that's very disciplined with their finances. They can't do it right now, but they can go to movies and go shopping and do it kind of with a free mindset because they've been so disciplined handling their responsibilities.
Yeah, I think this is all tied into Stoicism, right? I think Stoicism isn't just are you able to sit in a meeting and make be a statue and refresh your feelings, right? I think people mistake that for
complete opposite, yeah.
Right. It's being able to express your feelings or emotions in a healthy reaction or a healthy response that one builds confidence in your own decision making, and sort of tells your teammates that this guy is not going to fly off the handle every time something doesn't go his or her way.
Yeah.
Right. And how does that impact your team, right? Having that living to, and I'm not saying that, people need to suddenly become Stoics, but identifying these concepts, like a la carte, you're pulling it off and you're identifying that these are things that I can master. How does that, bring value to your team? Because if I'm not losing, going off the handle about stuff, when my team brings me bad news, then they're not going to hold that bad news from me, right? Or if I'm not going off the handle about somebody's idea that I just don't think is very smart, or whatever, then I'm not going, taking that on them, and then they don't feel that there's a level of trust to be able to bring those cool ideas to me anymore, right? So there's so many positive and negative effects of either living to it or not living to it.
I think it kind of goes back to that old adage about acting like you've been there before.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a situation that's a little, challenging or maybe uncertain, and you freak out about it, you're going to be less likely to actually overcome that challenge. But if you act like you've been there before, right? Okay, this is, we've been through this before. But that leader that freaks out over everything or outbursts or just kind of loses their cool, the people following you or the people who are expected to follow you aren't going to trust your ability to get them through that situation. Mm-hmm. So because they're going to think, well, he's a rookie, never been through this before. But if I see the leader that's going through it and they're like, oh, we got this, we're going to get through this. My boss, he's a retired Navy, I don't remember what he retired as, lieutenant commander maybe. And so it's great working with him because he understands, military background mindset. And when we were dealing with this pandemic, when it first came about, he's like, we're just going to go through it. And I'm like, what do you mean we're going to go through it? And he goes, if you've ever been on a ship and you're going through a storm, you go left or right, you get toppled over. He goes, right. And we can't just turn around and go back. He goes, we just have to go through it. We'll navigate here and there and turn left or right here and there, but you just have to go through it. And you don't freak out going through it because you're just going to give yourself that desire to want to turn around more often. So you just accept it and go for it. And I'm not saying be a person that's trying to be self-defeating and always trying to hurt yourself and, find challenges that hurt your team. But when you are dealt with a challenge, you kind of find the meaning in it and see what you can come out with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great analogy. And I think, going through it, and to go back to some of the Stoic philosophies, one of them is like going through the most challenging thing, like we talked about earlier. The obstacle is the way, right? Yeah. Like go through that, and a lot of times going around or whatever else, like you said, is not going to work out. So how do you get through it anyway? And not to downplay any of the situations that we may experience, and not to downplay the pandemic and right now, but we'll get through it.
Yeah.
Right? And then honestly, sometimes when you focus it, like, maybe we won't. I don't know, right? I don't know. But whatever it is, but like just thinking about it constantly and just catastrophizing about it, it's not going to help us at all right now, right? So how are you getting through it? There's some really really key points, and something else that I was kind of ask you, both of you guys, how do you think it can help us be better people in general, as in dealing with because life's not fair, right? And we're going to get handed all kinds of just poop baskets, right? Just stuff's being given to us and we got to deal with it. how do you think one can use Stoic philosophy to be able to deal with some of life's challenges and obstacles that get thrown at us?
Well, I think the more you sort of practice Stoicism, or in our case, Broicism, the more you have it a consistent thought that, hey, I'm going to try to learn how to better navigate things. You're more able to problem solve, right? If I'm that person that wastes my time and energy on insignificant things, any challenge that comes my way, I'm going to cower or run or hide. And what happens when you do that? The situation just gets worse, right? It doesn't go away, right? It just gets worse. But if I have that confidence and that I'm actually studying to be the best self that I can be, kind of going back to personal mastery, I'm more able to problem solve through certain situations and look for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's I think you sort of hit it on the nail on the head, Joe, with your question that life is not fair, right? And so that perspective for me is always in my mind, and things don't need to go my way. And in fact, most times, things might not go my way, right? And so I think that also ties to my motivation, that even when I fail at something, that doesn't mean that's the end of that. That just means that it didn't work out that way. Go back to the drawing board, or get back in the gym, or eat better, or figure out how to get your team dynamics better, and keep driving. That's the journey. To me, success is it's the treasure at the end of the rainbow. Like, maybe you're always going to be chasing it. So you really have to figure out, man, just be in the now and enjoy this journey that you're on, and put one foot in front of the other, and just drive. You know what I mean? That, to me, that's my sort of philosophy on what I think. And I think failure is a part of that, and that drives me to do better.
Yeah, for sure. And how many times you get to that treasure and it sucks anyway? You know what I mean? Like, you get there, you worked really hard and you got there, and then you're like, this isn't fair. I worked so hard to get here, and it's like, why? Yeah, well, go ahead.
Here's a perfect example, Chief. So when you made Chief, like, what was the feeling for you? Like,
so it was funny. Like, okay, so this is okay. Now we're gonna do the open kimono thing, right? So So when I made Chief, I was working extremely hard to get there. And then when I got there, it wasn't anticlimactic. I don't think that's the right term, because I was, I'm extremely proud of being Chief Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force, and to be able to get to that. But it was almost like, okay, now what? Right? And not what like I was done, but it was like, it was just a very strange feeling. And I actually wrote about it in one of my articles for the Llama page, and I almost felt like I kind of went into a little bit of a mild depression. Because it felt like, okay, I worked really hard. Now what? What did I do that for? Right? And there's other things going on in my life at the time that kind of influenced that too, that feeling. But wait, I should be happy, but I don't feel happy, right? I feel something else. And so it was an interesting, it's an interesting question you just posed. It wasn't like, okay, now I got it, now great, and everything's just happy forever now, right? I mean, it was like, okay, no,
life goes on,
right? Life goes on. Exactly goes on, right? And then seeking that next part of that meaning and moving forward, right? And what is, you get to that goal or whatever that might be. You just said it perfectly, Z. It's not the goal. It's the process, the journey to get there. Yeah. And how are you going to get there? Are you going to live honorably to get there? Are you going to be a good person on the way there? Are you speeding to get there? And when you get there, like I said, it's not what everybody thinks it is, and sometimes you get there and it sucks, right? So what are you doing next? What's going on now, right? But I think if you live, the Stoics actually talk about how happiness and pleasure, they consider them two very different things. Pleasure is something that, we can just kind of feel at times. Happiness is more like a state of being that we want to reach, It's an inner peace, right? Versus just having pleasure and whatever you might be doing at that moment.
Can we just say that was the Mandalorian? Well, I mean, he had to be a Stoic, right? Like, this is the way. Like, I mean, had to be.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, Joe.
Oh no, yeah, you're 100% right, man. So it's I think that just living to the values, and like I said, it's like a la carte. You know, when you brought up the whole thing about your faith, Scott, you know, and how that kind of ties in. I was actually Googling something earlier about some of this topic that we're going to talk about, and I swore I saw a link that said something like from the porch to the church. And it was basically comparing Stoicism to Christian belief. You know what I mean? Like it was an interesting link that actually tied those two together. It was talking about, you know, porch, you know, Stoicism to the church. And I was like, oh, I got to go back and read that one. But, you know, but it's all good stuff, right? It's like great concepts on how to operating systems and beliefs to live effectively.
And that brings me to like what we're doing here, right? Like it's great to be practice Stoicism by yourself, but I think the intent is to surround yourself with other people, right? You know, if they were doing it on the porch, right? You know, they got together and they studied and philosophized, and I think that's important for people to do, especially for validation. You know, because you could go through life wondering, am I doing things the right way? And again, you know, I think happiness really is up to the individual, but it's always a good idea to, I think, to kind of do what we're doing here. You know, there's just three of us having a conversation. Yeah, it's being recorded. Yeah, we're going to push it out to everybody. But these are conversations the three of us would have had already. You know, these. And so I think it's important to surround yourself with other Broics. Is it Broics? Yeah. Broicism. Yeah. Other Broics, right?
We're the Broics now.
or Stoics. Well, no, what would sisters be? Stoics. I don't know. But just surround yourself with other people who are kind of on that same journey, right? Who are all kind of on that same journey. And I guess one of my regrets probably for earlier in my career is I didn't do that. We were more about having a good time, and we didn't really focus on career progression or education or anything like that. We focused more on, you know, going out and having a good time. And so I think it's important that, especially if you're a younger person listening to this, find those people, find your crew, find your clique, your brotherhood, sisterhood that are on that same journey that are going to keep you on the right track. That's sort of what we've done over the past few years.
That is so important, right? I mean, there's countless books that talks about, you know, surround yourself around the people that are better than you.
Mm-hmm. And I'm still looking. No, for the book. I'm looking for the book. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But honestly, we're sort of reluctant to do that because we like to be around people that are like us and where we're at and where we're at in our lives. You know, I mean, so we don't necessarily want to hang out with someone that's going to push us out of our comfortable spot that we're in within that phase of our life, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And we typically surround ourselves, especially when we're younger and less mature, with other people that are just as entitled as we were when we were that age, right? I mean, like, there's certain things. And I know, like, for me, when I was younger, fairness was such a big deal. We kind of go back to fairness, right? But that was such a big deal to me. And I thought it was so important when things were unfair, especially to me, you know, and I felt entitled to some type of fairness. And it was just a toxic way to live. It was not healthy, right? And I love the way Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday were talking about it. They described it as it's a disabling thought to feel that everything needs to be fair, right? It's a disabling thought, and it's like jumping in the passenger side seat of a car and just riding in life, right? You're not in the driver's seat anymore.
Well, and I'll even say, you know what? I wouldn't even say, as we talk about this and I sort of think more about it, I wouldn't even say that life isn't fair. I would say it's just life. That's just the way it is. Because if you say it's not fair, that means that you were expecting something that maybe someone said that they were going to give you. So it's just life's a journey, and there's going to be some things that you might consider up, you might consider down, but it's not necessarily fair or unfair. I guess so. Another way I'm looking at it. But I think the more you practice personal well-being, the more you I guess practice personal mastery, Stoicism, Broicism, the easier it is to get through those challenges, right? Because those challenges just make you stronger. It gives you more confidence to get through those challenges.
And you don't waste as much time because
exactly.
Like clearly I can't do much to that. And if I do spend 100% of my energy on it, it might push the needle like a centimeter, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Where I could exert this energy somewhere else, and it's going to help other people, help myself grow, or whatever it might be. But it's not going to be just wasted on that centimeter. That's not going to be very impactful at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as we start to close this thing up here, we talked about a bunch of different things: emotional intelligence, locus of control. That came up probably a lot during our whole discussion. Motivation, fairness of life, right? So do you guys have kind of any closing remarks on how you feel like Stoicism can be leveraged in someone's day-to-day to either, build credibility, influence, or anything like that?
Yeah, if I would say surround yourself, like we talked about, with good people or great or gooder people. People, greater people. Right?
Gooders.
Gooders. All right.
Try to. Because here's the thing, if you ever shy away from being around people that you think are better than you, the thing is those people that you surround yourself with, they're looking at you at some sort of skill or talent that you have that you're better at than they are. So you sort of balance each other out. So I would say never try to keep yourself from being around better people because you think that they're gonna shadow you a little bit, or you're gonna be shadowed by them a little bit, because you're going to have something to offer them as well. So, my takeaway is surround yourself with great people.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron.
That's right.
100%. And then I think for me, I would say the big takeaway is some of us, like I said, there's a strange contrast to what some people are doing across this country. Some people are stuck at home and not able to do anything, where some people are in places like UZ where you really can't, or even supposed to go out much at all, if anything. But whatever that circumstance might be, you have a choice on how you're going to behave in that circumstance and how are you going to leverage that circumstance to be better. So I've chosen on days when I'm at the home teleworking to better myself, whether that's through exercise, reading more. Netflix is cool. I think everybody should, get in there and do what they like and get entertained too, but take some time to figure it out, because what's going to make you better. Because at the end of this, what I want to be able to tell myself is that if this is 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, that 3 to 6 months was value added, and I am proud of what I did during that time.
Yeah. What do you look like on the other side of this, right?
Yeah. Prepping and always learning. And so I'll close with a quote from Marcus Aurelius, and he says, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So that one really stuck out with me. He's got a lot of quotes on Stoicism and how to get better in your day to day. At the end of the day, I think we're all chasing success and happiness. I hope that our Broicism tips help you along that journey. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, Llama listeners. Out.
All right. Llama's out.
Out. Thanks for listening to the show. We'd love for you to connect with us at www.llama-leadership.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Llama Leadership, and also on Instagram at Llama Leaders. And a big thanks to Mike Whitmer for the music. To check out more of their stuff, go to soundcloud.com/Mike-Whitmer. Thanks again. See you on the next episode.